Kaf Lamed Vav Amid Aleph, 6 lines from the top. Tan Rabbanon Yochel Yoitza Adam Yedei Chayvas B'Maaser Sheni B'Yerushalayim. You might think that a person could be Yaitz the Chayv of matzah if the matzah was made out of Maaser Sheni. Now he's eating it even if he eats in Yerushalayim. So that's a place where you're supposed to eat it, where the mitzvah to eat it. So there's no Isser B'Dovar. So you might think that you can be Yaitza with that type of matzah. Talmud Loimar Lechem Oini. No, you can't, because the Torah says matzah is lechem oini. So we darshan oini from a lashon of aninos, that it's lechem that can be eaten when a person is Rahman Islan in a matzah of aninos, the day that the Korah was nifter. So mash and nechal ba'aninos, only the matzah of something that can be eaten in a state of aninos, which excludes Maaser Sheni she'einu nechal ba'aninos ela b'simcha. Maaser Sheni cannot be eaten in ba'aninos loy achalti ba'oini mimenu. That the Torah says that by the Vidi Maisis it says that you didn't eat it ba'oini in a matzah of aninos, and therefore matzah, which says by the Torah says lechem oini, which we darshan according to Yosef Glili, that it's matzah that can be eaten in a matzah of aninos, that excludes Maaser Sheni that cannot be eaten in a state of aninos. But Rabbi Kiva says no. Matzahs. We said the Torah says matzah several times, it repeats it, and therefore it includes even matzah made out of Maaser Sheni. So so how do we darshan lechem oini? So we say prat li'isa sheni loisha b'yan v'shemen advash. It excludes the matzah if it was kneaded with wine or oil or a honey. That is not lechem oini. He darshans oini from a lashon of an oni, that a poor person. That's not the bread of a poor person. He doesn't have the funds, he doesn't have the money for those rich ingredients. He eats simple bread. So he darshans, Rabbi Kiva darshans, the lechem oini is lechem oni. And therefore he says it's excluding if the matzah was kneaded with those types of ingredients. So Yomi Masechet that we learned previously that the matzah kneaded with those ingredients, you can't be yaitza the mitzvah of matzah with us in any event, because they don't become chometz. So why do we need a special drasha to exclude it? It's only something that can become lidei chometz. You can be yaitza matzah, but these things can't come lidei chometz. The Ramban answers that Rabbi Kiva is coming to include even in a case where there was also an addition of water, that there was an addition of the water in it, then where it could become chometz, then still it's excluded because it's not considered lechem oini. So we had a machlokes Rashi and Taisus and how much water. And Rashi says even if it's a miyut of water, it can become Taisus as a roiv of its water. But that's what we're talking about over here. There's an addition of water, and nevertheless, you can't be yaitza because it's not considered lechem oini. More of my time is Rabbi Kiva. Why does Rabbi Kiva darshan it this way, as to exclude a lechem that's ashir, a lechem of a shira, masah shira? Why not to exclude Maaser Sheni? Because he says miksiv lechem oini. The ksiv of it, the way it is written, it's not written with a vav, so it's not written clearly as lechem oini. It's written without a vav, oniksiv. It is written as without a vav, which can therefore be pronounced as ani, which means a poor person. Rav Yosef Galili, mi karina and ani, but we don't pronounce it ani, oini karina. We pronounce it as oini, and therefore it's a lashon, and therefore of aninos, and it excludes Maaser Sheni. Rabbi Kiva, I the karina be oini. Yes, it says we read it oini, but meaning, and as it's lachas and mufarish, the reason that Rabbi Kiva says we darshan it this way and not the other way is because, yes, we pronounce it oini, which is a lashon of oini. It does not oni, but that is to tell you Shmuel, Domer Shmuel, Lechem Oini, Lechem Shoinim Alav Dvarim Harbe. It's the matzah of the Leil Seder that Oini we answer, we say, we declare on it many things. We read the Haggadah, we say the Haggadah, we say Hallel. For that reason, it's called Lechem Oini. But not a Lashon of Aninos. If it meant to say a Lashon of Aninos, it would have been clearer, it would have been written with the Vav. The fact that it's written without the Vav tells you that it's Oini, for Lechem Sho'enu L'Dvarim Harbe, but it's also Oni, that it has to be a Lechem and an Oni, that it cannot be made or kneaded with Lechem, with the Yayin and Shemen and Dvash. But if it wanted to be clear that it means aninos, it should have been therefore written with a vav that would be clear that we mean to say that it is a lechem that can be eaten with aninos, and therefore to exclude meiser the fact that it doesn't have it with a vav, therefore we don't darshan it that way. Is it so? Is it true that Rabbi Kiva says if it's needed with those ingredients, you can't be yaitza with it? I will learn in the Bryce. You cannot knead the matzah with those ingredients, and if he did, Rabbi Gamaliel, you have to burn it right away. It has to be burnt right away because of chashash that these things will be machmitz very quickly, and therefore you have to burn it right away. But the Chum say no. Nevertheless, you can be careful that it doesn't come lidei chimutz, and b'diavad, if you did need it with those ingredients, you do not have to burn it yeyachal. Rabbi Kiva says, Rabbi Yeshua, I made my Pesach with Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yeshua, and I kneaded the dough for the matzah with those ingredients, and they didn't object at all. Now, even though you can't knead with these ingredients, as the Gemara will say in a moment, that's going back on the Tanna Kama, even though the Tanna Kama says you cannot knead with these ingredients, but you can use it to baste the matzah with it, to smear it with those ingredients. You can't knead it with it, but mekatrim, you can smear the surface with those ingredients. Also the Tanna Kama. So that statement is referring back to the Tanna Kama. The Chacham say, no, it goes hand in hand. If you can knead it, then you can be mekatim. But if you can't knead with it, you can't be mekatim either. But Vishavim, they all agree, but you cannot knead the dough with lukewarm water. Lukewarm water hastens the chimutz. It hastens the rising of the dough, and therefore it'll become chametz very quickly, and we're concerned that you will not be able to avoid having it come to chametz. So you can't knead the dough with the paisha with the lukewarm water. But in any event, what do we see over here? We see over here that Rabbi Kiva says that you can knead the dough with these ingredients. So you see that you can with yain and shemen and dvash, it's mutar. So, and we said before that Rabbi Kiva says that no, you need lechem oini. More answers like kasha. It's not a kasha. Hal biyantav rishon, hal biyantav sheni. What Rabbi Kiva said that you cannot knead it with these ingredients is because you need lechem oini. You need a lechem of an oni. It has to be a poor man's bread, but that's only for the mitzvah, the first night of Pesach, the mitzvah of matzah. But that's not a problem of chometz. It's not because of a chashash of chometz. So therefore, if it's not the first night of Pesach, if it's not the first night of Pesach where you have a mitzvah of matzah, it's the other days of Pesach where there's no mitzvah of matzah. It's just that it shouldn't be chometz. Then you can knead it with those ingredients. Where he says it cannot be, it's only for matzah's mitzvah. Like kasha, hal biyantav rishon, hal biyantav sheni. It's the difference of the first night and the rest of the Pesach. So when we say biyantav sheni, what we mean is that we mean from after the first night in Eretz Yisrael, it's only the first night that it's the matzah's mitzvah. We mean Yom Tov Sheni, we mean the rest of Pesach. Like Yeshua said to his son, on the first night of Pesach, don't knead the matzah with milk, because I need it for the matzah's mitzvah. But after that point, when it's not for the matzah's mitzvah, then you could knead it with milk, because it's only a problem of the matzah's mitzvah, where the milk is like the other ingredients, like yain, shemen, and dvash, where it's matzah shira. It's not lechem of an oni, but it's not a chomistic problem, and therefore thereafter it's mutter. Back to Gemara, side problem. Well, how can you make milchige bread? Milchige bread is also, even the rest of the Pesach, even the rest of the year, how you can't have milchige bread. You can't knead the dough with milk anytime. And if you did, the pasta is also mipnei hergel avera, because it might lead to an avera, because you might eat it with meat. So some you can't have milchige bread. So how can he tell his son to knead it afterwards with milk? So what it says, so the more then changes the version of it and says, we're not talking about milk, he meant honey. The first night when it's for matzah's mitzvah, don't knead it with honey. But thereafter you can knead it with honey, because it's not needed for matzah's mitzvah, and it's not a chomistic problem. Or alternatively, you can say the version that we had before, we're talking where it was with milk, and he said you could do it with milk. How can you make milchige bread? How is it mutter the rest of the Pesach? If it's only the size of the eye of an ox, meaning it's a smaller quantities, where we're not concerned that it'll be a leftover and that you'll come to eat it with meat, then it's mutter. It means also here, it means that size, that there's smaller quantities, we're not concerned you'll eat it with the meat. Now continue, we brought down the Baraisa that says you cannot knead with lukewarm water. You can't knead it with lukewarm water. Why is it different than the case of a mincha? Mincha is when a mincha which also cannot be chametz. It's not allowed to be chametz, and we learned this non you are allowed to knead it with lukewarm water. You just have to be careful that it doesn't become chametz. So over there it can't become chametz, and nevertheless you could use lukewarm water. More answers, reason. They said that by menachos, which is done by the Kahanim reason, they're very careful, they're very diligent. Yom Rabbeinu reason, here we're talking for the Hamaynam, for the people at large in general. So they're not as diligent, they're not as careful, so therefore we don't allow it. Well, if you're telling me that the Kahanim reason, and they're diligent and they're careful, if that's the case, you should allow the following as well. You should be able to soak it in water before they pound it to remove the shell, to remove the bran. They should be allowed to soak it. And soaking it allows you to remove more of the bran. It's cleaner, it's better quality flour. So why don't they allow l'sisa? And we'll see shortly that they don't, because of a chashash of chametz. Because you're soaking it, it'll come to chametz. Now if you're telling me the kahanim rizrizim, and therefore you can knead it with lukewarm water, why can't you do l'sisa? So Milson Nami losses. Alama Amar Vizera, Amar Rabba Bar Yirmiyah, Amar Shmuel. It said, Chitin Shel Menachas, Ein Loisen Oisam. You are not allowed to do l'sisa, you're not allowed to soak them. So why not? More answers. Lisha Bezrizin Isa. The Lisha is done by its reason, by the Kahanim. L'sisa, less of its reason. The l'sisa is done earlier in the process, so it's not done by the kahanim. So it's not done by its reason, by these diligent people, and therefore we have the chashash. But by the lisha, by the kneading, we're not chashash. Frank the Gemara, is that so? Lisha mi'isab's reason is the lisha, is the kneading, is it done by the kahanim, by this reason? V'aksiv, the pasuk says, "V'yatzik alei shemen v'avia al bnei Aaron kahanim v'komas." It says you pour the oil and then you bring it to the kahanim to do the kmitza. So, what's the seder? Mikmitza ve'elach mitzvah kuna. the mitzvah kuna is from the time of Kemitza, from the time that they remove it and they take the fistful. That teaches you that the yitziko blila and can be done, even the pouring of the oil and the mixing of the oil, and therefore, kol shekain, the kneading of it, the kneading of the flour with the water, can be done without a kohen. So it's not done by a kohen. So therefore, it's not done by zrizim, and therefore, why are we not concerned by the kneading with the lukewarm water, but we are concerned by the lasisa, by the soaking? The more answers, Lisha inachanam. It's not done by the kahanim. Nehida b'zrizim less. It's not done by the kahanim, but b'makayim zrizim isa. It's done in a place of zrizim. It's done in the place it's done in the azora, and it's a place where there's supervision. And therefore, even though it wasn't done by the kahanim, but it was under their supervision, and therefore we're not so concerned. Damar mar blila kshera bizar. It's kosher by Azor, but it can't be done outside the Chaim of the Azor. So it's done within the confines of the Azora, and therefore it's done under supervision of the Kohanim, which are Zrizim, so we're not concerned for Chimutz. La Puki L'Sisa, which excludes L'Sisa, the Einaba is Zrizim, V'Leiba Mokayim Zrizim. But the soaking of the bran is not done by the Kohanim. It's not even done in the Azora. It's not done under supervision, and therefore we have a concern by the L'Sisa. The Gemara, well, why is it different than the case of the Minchas HaOmer that we say over there? The Sanya Minchas HaOmer Leisen Oisa V'Tzevin Oisa, that the Minchas HaOmer, that you can soak it and you pilot it, or you put it and pile it into a pile, and you put it into a pile, and that drains the water from it. But Al Kopanim, you see that this over here, it's talking about Lasisa, and it's have the same issue. It's not done by Kohanim, it's not done by Malkam Zrizim, so it's not done by either Zrizim or Malkam Zrizim, and yet Lasisa over there is mutter. So somehow we have a kasha that why does Shmuel say that the Sisa cannot be done, but by the Minchas HaOmer, which similarly cannot be Chometz, it has to be matzah, can't be chametz. So there over there we are matzah l'sisa. The Gemara answers tzibur shiny. That's different because that's a korban tzibur. That was talking about the minchas aimer that's brought on the second day Pesach. That's a korban tzibur. Korban tzibur is done under supervision of bezdin. So therefore, you do have the supervision of zrizin. You have the supervision of bezdin. They'll ensure it doesn't come lidei chametz. But if you have a korban yochin that's done, the lasis is done not by kohanim, not by zrizim, not by makam zrizim, there's no supervision, and therefore we're concerned for chimutz, and we don't allow it. But however, when we say by the kneading of the dough, that the kneading is done by makam zrizim, then over there it's done by makam zrizim in the Zara under the supervision of the kohanim. Therefore, we're not concerned. We're not concerned that it'll come lidei chimutz. Mashayin kain by the matzah, which is not done by zrizim or by makam zrizim, is given over to the people in general. They make their matzah. Over there, we do not allow the kneading with lukewarm water.